Hello, it's Sarah again, and welcome to another book review. And today I'm reviewing From the Neck Up, an illustrated guide to hat making by Denise Dreher. Illustrations by Beth Sanders and Randall Scholes, photographs by Jerry Zek. Now, I was recommended to get this book. It's expensive. You're going to pay about £40 for this book. So bear that in mind. It is a heavyweight paperback. It's quite a thick book. So here goes. Now, I wanted to say a lot of the illustrations are these sort of very nice vintagey looking illustrations, you know, 17th, 18th century. A bit strange, but there we are. And here we go. Now, what I will say is this is a very in-depth technical book. This is really if you're moving on from being a beginner. And it talks about historical considerations, the purpose of the book, advantages to making your own hats, the lessons learned. I mean, she does say, which I say a lot, millinery is often a time-consuming process of trial and error. Milliners must have a great deal of patience and be able to work slowly and carefully. So it talks about confidence, etc. It talks about designing the hat. And it goes into a lot of depth from lines, size, shape, mass, position, density, texture, colour. She talks about lines and different ways a silhouette can change the wearer. As I say, it's a very technical book. It's interesting, but it's technical. Now, apologies if you hear noise in the background because my neighbours have decided to dig up their drive, which is typical when I decide to do a video. So yeah, it goes on and on about contrast, emphasis. As I say, it is a technical book. Materials and equipment. Now, as with most millinery books, this goes into quite a bit of depth about all the materials that you can or could use. Now, this was written in, let me just remind myself back at the beginning, 1981. So some of it's a bit dated and some of the things that it mentions you can't find anymore. Now, one of the things that's interesting in here is she talks about adhesives and millinery rubber solution, and I was put onto this by another milliner. Now, when you look in very old millinery books, they often talk about millinery glue, which they used a lot for fabric, and it turns out that it was a rubber solution. Not easy to get now. In fact, I haven't found a millinery supplier that makes it. But you can buy rubber cement. And I am going to be talking about using rubber cement in my next question and answer video. So if you want to follow along with that, don't forget to subscribe and also click notifications so that you know when I put up a new video. She says rubber solution can also be used in gluing feathers, flowers and ribbons onto hat. But rubber glue, rubber solution, rubber cement is a permanent sort of fixture. And I found that I wouldn't use it on feathers because it discolours them. But again, I'll talk about that. So it talks about all sorts of cleaning fluids, felts, floral tape, foundation, fabrics. Now, the photos in here are really not good. They're very dark and they don't give you enough depth. So, not very easy to see. I mean, she's put various foundation materials used in millinery here, and you wouldn't be able to really tell what's what from that. So she goes on about materials and equipment, stitches and techniques. So again, lots and lots of stitching techniques that you'll find in most millinery books. Wires, joining circles of wires. Wig and hat information sheet. She's done this so that you could copy this and print this off. So if you wanted to have a sheet for each customer with their sizes and whatever. I think she did, I've read up, she did do a lot of theatrical millinery, and you can tell that as you get into the book. She gives you ways of making, this is a master oval pattern for her head size. She talks about how to change the shape of the brim and the crown. So she talks about the foundation. She talks, you see again, the photos are not great. They're very dark and quite small, to be honest. I mean, you can figure out what's going on, but it would have been nice if the photos were nicer, but there we are. Let's have a look. Now she talks about willow. We don't call it willow anymore, but there we are. Wire foundations, she talks about those a lot. Covering the shape. Mulling, you know, where I often say you need to put a base coat soda matte or other fabrics on before you put the top fabric. Why did I have a piece of thingy in there? I have no idea. Oh, again, and she talks about millinery glue here. That was why I put a post-it in there to remind me. So I will be talking about that. Covering the shape. And again, you see what I mean about theatrical. A lot of the pictures are of theatrical headdresses. Facing brims, binding edges, trimming the hat. Cockades. I mean, it is a very in-depth book. She's covered virtually everything. Finishing the interior, linings, etc. So, there we are. Working with straw. And again, you see that's tiny photos, which I find a bit hard. Making a head block. Well, she talks about gluing slabs of wood together to carve a head block. Now, to be honest, I can't see why you would want to do that when you can buy one, because this would cost you money and take you forever. Draping a turban. Renovations and alterations. And then she puts a lot of patterns in. And again, really for theatrical milliners, I would, you know, I'm not going to be making Egyptian pharaoh headdresses. But she puts a lot in. Now, what I thought I'd do was I'd work out one and cut it out and print it off, see what happened. So I'm assuming she's done 1-inch squares. Well, I assumed she'd done 1-inch squares. So I squared up a piece of paper, cut this out, and it was tiny. It didn't really work. So then I looked on the back, and it said something about the sizing. It's 1/4-inch scale. So I've got to rework that out. But I mean, lots of very simplistic ones. A wimple, a jester hat, but as you can see, mostly theatrical. Although some would come in handy for other things. But there's a lot of them. Snood, bonnets, caps, newsboy, sports cap. So, and then a glossary. Bibliography. And that's it. So if you're interested in the do's and don'ts, the whys and wherefores, and more of a technical book, this is for you. And it's printed by the Madhatter Press, which I think is the family of Denise Dreher. So, I mean, she had a very good career in costume construction, design, and history. She was she studied theatrical and historical hat making. She's worked in theatres, museums, and libraries. So, and she's worked on BBC film series, etc. So, I mean, she's had a good run at it. Anyway, another book, if you're interested. And thank you very much for paying attention. Cheers then. Bye.